Captain William Hayes stood at the observation deck of the Earth exploration vessel Horizon, watching as the massive space station grew larger in the viewscreen. The station was home to the Galactic Council, a gathering of 23 spacefaring species that controlled most of the known galaxy. Today, humanity would ask to join their ranks. "Nervous, Captain?" asked Dr. Laura Fisher, who stood quietly beside him. Unlike the other members of the human delegation who fidgeted with their uniforms or rehearsed their speeches, Dr. Fisher seemed perfectly calm. Her brown hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and her eyes remained steady as she studied the approaching station. "Should I be?" Hayes replied, tugging at his collar. In truth, he was terrified. Humanity had only discovered faster-than-light travel 15 years ago. Compared to species that had been crossing the stars for thousands of years, Earth was a child taking its first steps. "They're just people," Fisher said. "Different shapes, different biology, but still people with hopes and fears. We'll be fine." Hayes wished he shared her confidence. The reports from initial contacts painted a complicated picture. Some species welcomed humans with curiosity, others with caution, and a few with open hostility. Among the hostile group were the Vorg, massive reptilian beings known throughout the galaxy as unstoppable warriors. The ship's communications officer interrupted his thoughts. "Captain, we're receiving docking instructions. The Council welcomes the Earth delegation." The next few hours passed in a blur of protocols and procedures. The human delegation of 12 was escorted through gleaming hallways by silent, hovering robots. Hayes noted how other alien representatives moved aside as they passed, staring with multiple eyes, sensory stalks, or whatever they used for vision. Finally, they reached the massive council chamber, a circular room with rising tiers of seats designed to accommodate beings of all shapes and sizes. At the center stood a simple platform where speakers could address the gathered representatives. A tall, willowy being with iridescent skin approached them. "I am Coordinator Illyri of the Avaran people," she said through her translator. "The Council will convene shortly. Your delegation may take the blue section there." She pointed to a small group of seats near the speaking platform. As they settled in, Hayes studied the chamber. Above each section hung symbols representing different species. He recognized a few: the crystalline formations of the Tetrax, the spiral patterns of the Noor Collective, and the jagged red emblem of the Vorg Imperium. The Vorg delegation entered, last 5 enormous figures with scaled skin and bony ridges along their spines. They moved with surprising grace despite their size, each step precise and controlled. Their leader, Ambassador Kralthak, wore elaborate armor adorned with what Hayes suspected were battle trophies. A soft tone echoed through the chamber, and the gathered representatives fell silent. The 4,827th meeting of the Galactic Council is now in session, announced a voice from hidden speakers. "First item, the petition from the planet Earth for observer status." Hayes stood, prepared to deliver the speech he had practiced for weeks. Before he could step forward, Ambassador Kralthak rose from his seat. "Point of order," the Vorg's translator boomed. "The Council's traditions are clear. New species must demonstrate their worth before being granted even observer status." A murmur spread through the chamber. Hayes froze, uncertain of the proper. Protocol Coordinator Illyri stepped forward. "Ambassador Kralthak, Earth has fulfilled all formal requirements. Their technology has reached the necessary threshold, and they have established peaceful first contact with 5 council members." "Technical requirements, yes," Kralthak hissed. His massive head swung toward the human delegation. "But what of character? What of strength? I see before me a soft-bodied prey species that has barely left its homeworld. The galaxy is dangerous. Coordinator, the Council cannot afford to admit weaklings who will become burdens in times of crisis." Several representatives nodded in agreement. Hayes felt his heart sink. This was exactly the scenario Earth's diplomats had feared, being dismissed, before they could even state their case. "With respect, Ambassador," Hayes began, fighting to keep his voice steady. "Humanity has overcome many challenges to reach this point." "Challenges?" Kralthak interrupted with a sound that might have been laughter. Your species has never faced true challenges. You evolved on a gentle world with plentiful resources, protected from cosmic radiation by a strong magnetic field. Even your predators were small and easily defeated. Before Hayes could respond, Dr. Fisher stepped forward. The captain tried to catch her eye. This was a severe breach of protocol, but she was already approaching the speaking platform. "My name is Dr. Laura Fisher, xenobiologist from Earth," she said calmly. The chamber fell silent, partly from surprise at this unexpected speaker, partly from curiosity about what this small human female would say to the intimidating Vorg. "Ambassador Kralthak suggests humans know nothing of challenges or strength," she continued, her voice clear and confident. "I find this interesting, coming from a species that evolved with natural armor, claws, and remarkable physical strength." The Vorg delegation stirred angrily, but Fisher raised a hand in a gentle gesture. "I mean no disrespect. Your evolutionary advantages are impressive, but consider this. Humans evolved with none of these gifts. We were not the strongest, fastest, or most naturally armed species on our planet. Early humans could be killed by predators, diseases, even weather." She looked around the chamber, making eye contact with representatives from various species. "We did not survive because we were natural warriors. We survived because we learned to observe, to understand, and to adapt. We created tools, developed medicine, built shelters. We formed communities where different skills were valued." Fisher turned back to Kralthak. "Humans don't claim to be warriors by nature, Ambassador. We claim to be problem solvers. When faced with a stronger opponent, we don't always fight. Sometimes we find another way. Sometimes that means making peace. Sometimes that means creating new technology. Sometimes it means working together." The Tetrax elder, a crystalline being who had so far been silent, shifted forward. An interesting perspective. Yet the question remains, can a species that lacks warrior instinct survive in a galaxy with real threats? "With respect, Elder," Fisher replied, "I would argue that humanity's history proves we can. We've survived ice ages, plagues, and our own worst mistakes. We've gone from stone tools to space travel in a fraction of the time many council species required." She paused. "And we did it without natural armor or weapons. We did it with these." She held up her hands. The chamber was quiet for a long moment. Finally, Coordinator Illyri spoke. "The human delegate raises valid points. I propose we accept Earth's petition for observer status and evaluate their contributions over the standard probationary period." A vote was called. Hayes watched nervously as representatives signaled their positions. When the tally appeared on the main display, he released the breath he'd been holding. The motion had passed, though narrowly. As the session adjourned, Kralthak approached the human delegation. Up close, he towered over even the tallest humans, his amber eyes fixed on Fisher. "Your words were clever, human, but words alone do not prove worth." His lipless mouth curved slightly. "We shall see what you are truly made of in the days to come." As the Vorg delegation departed, Hayes turned to Fisher. "That was either the bravest or most foolish thing I've ever seen." Fisher smiled slightly. "Maybe both, but we're here now. That's what matters." Hayes nodded, looking around at the departing council members. Some viewed the humans with new interest, others with clear skepticism. This was just the beginning, he knew. The real test was still to come. 2 weeks passed since Earth gained observer status in the Galactic Council. The human delegation settled into their assigned quarters on the massive space station. They attended daily sessions, learning about interstellar trade laws, non-interference, policies, and dispute resolution procedures. Most species treated them with polite distance, as if waiting to see if the humans would last. Captain Hayes sat in the delegation's private meeting room, reviewing reports from home. Earth's governments were eager for updates on potential technology exchanges. He looked up as Dr. Laura Fisher entered, carrying her tablet. "The Tetrax representatives have invited me to tour their research facilities tomorrow," she said, taking a seat across from him. They seemed genuinely interested in exchanging scientific knowledge. Hayes nodded. Good. We need allies here. He lowered his voice. The Vorg have been unusually quiet since the opening session. That worries me. As if summoned by his words, the door chime sounded. When Hayes called for entry, a small hovering robot floated in. Official notice for the Earth delegation, it announced in its metallic voice. The robot projected a holographic document into the air. The Vorg Imperium invokes Article 17 of the Council Charter, the right of challenge. Your presence is required in the Great Hall in 1 hour. The robot departed, leaving Hayes and Fisher staring at each other. What exactly is Article 17? Hayes asked, already reaching for his communicator to alert the rest of the delegation. Fisher quickly searched through the council documents they had been given. Her face grew serious as she read. It's an ancient provision, rarely used in modern times. When a new species seeks full membership, any existing member can issue a formal challenge to test their worthiness. She looked up. It's essentially a sanctioned contest between champions. An hour later, the human delegation entered the Great Hall. Unlike the formal council chamber, this room was circular with a lowered center area surrounded by viewing platforms. The space reminded Hayes of an arena. All 23 council species had representatives present. The Vorg delegation stood proudly near the center, their ambassador Kraltak wearing ceremonial armor that gleamed under the lights. Coordinator Illyri approached the humans. I must apologize, she said quietly. We did not expect the Vorg to invoke this ancient tradition. It has not been used in over 700 years. What exactly does this challenge involve? Hayes asked. The challenging species selects a champion and a test of their choosing. The challenged species must provide their own champion to face this test. She hesitated. If your champion fails, Earth's petition for eventual full membership will be rejected for 50 standard years. Hayes felt cold. 50 years of isolation from the galactic community would be devastating for Earth's development. Kraltak stepped forward, his massive form dominating the center of the hall. His translator projected his voice to fill the space. Honored representatives of the Galactic Council, the Vorg Imperium has served as guardians of this council for millennia. It is our duty to ensure that only the worthy join our ranks. He turned his amber eyes toward the humans. Earth claims to be ready for membership, but words are empty without proof. The Vorg ambassador gestured and another member of his delegation stepped forward. This Vorg was even larger, with darker scales and numerous scars visible on his exposed skin. This is Commander Gorth, hero of the Rigel conflict and master of 17 combat forms. Kralthak's mouth formed what might have been a smile. He will represent the Vorg in this challenge. Commander Gorth stood nearly 9 feet tall. Muscles rippled under his scaled skin as he performed a brief demonstration of his fighting abilities. His movements were shockingly fast for a being of his size. The display ended with him shattering a thick metal pole with a single strike from his clawed hand. Murmurs spread through the watching delegations. Hayes noticed several representatives giving the humans pitying looks. Kraltak continued. The challenge is simple. Combat to submission. No fatal strikes are permitted, but otherwise all natural abilities and reasonable equipment may be used. He faced Hayes directly. Who will stand for Earth? Hayes turned to confer quickly with his delegation. The obvious choice was Lieutenant Paul Weber, their security chief with extensive combat training. Weber was already stepping forward, his face set with determination. I volunteer to represent Earth, said a calm voice. Hayes turned in shock to see Dr. Fisher standing beside him. What are you doing? He whispered urgently. Trust me, she replied quietly. Then, louder, she said, I, Dr. Laura Fisher, will serve as Earth's champion. The announcement caused immediate reaction. The Vorg delegation burst into what could only be described as laughter. Other species whispered among themselves. Lieutenant Weber looked at Fisher as if she had lost her mind. Dr. Fisher, this is inadvisable, Hayes said under his breath. Weber is trained for combat situations. And that's exactly what they expect, she replied. We won't win by playing their game by their rules. Before Hayes could argue further, Kraltak spoke again. The human female accepts the challenge? This is most unexpected. He studied Fisher with new interest. Perhaps humans are braver than we thought, or more foolish. Coordinator Illyri stepped between them. Dr. Fisher, as neutral observer, I must confirm that you understand the stakes of this challenge. If you fail, Earth will be denied membership. Consideration for 50 years. I understand, Fisher replied. Then it is settled. The challenge will take place tomorrow at mid-cycle. Both champions will have until then to prepare. Illyri raised her voice to address all gathered representatives. Let it be recorded that this challenge follows all ancient traditions and is recognized by the Council. As the gathering dispersed, Hayes pulled Fisher aside. What were you thinking? Weber has military training. You're a scientist. Fisher met his gaze calmly. Captain, do you remember what I said in my first address to the Council? Humans survive not by being the strongest, but by understanding our environment and adapting. This isn't an academic debate, Laura. You'll be facing a 9-foot warrior, with claws and natural armor. Exactly. And everyone expects me to try to fight him like a warrior myself. She smiled slightly. That's not going to happen. Later that evening, Fisher sat alone in her quarters. Spread across her desk were detailed files on Vorg physiology, data on Commander Gorth's previous combat encounters, and schematics for several small devices she had requested from the ship's engineering team. A knock came at her door. When she opened it, she found Lieutenant Weber standing there with an uncomfortable expression. Dr. Fisher, I've come to offer training. We only have hours, but I might be able to show you some basic defensive moves. She invited him in. I appreciate that, Lieutenant, but I won't be fighting Gorth directly. That would be suicide. Weber frowned. Then how do you plan to win? By remembering what makes humans different from the Vorg. She pointed to the files on her desk. They value strength and combat skill. We value knowledge and adaptation. With all due respect, Doctor, knowledge won't stop a direct hit from those claws. Fisher picked up one of the small devices she had been working on. No, but it might prevent that hit from ever happening. She looked up at Weber. I need your help with something else, though. Do you think you could access the environmental controls for the Great Hall? Weber's eyebrows rose. What exactly are you planning? For the first time since the challenge was issued, Dr. Laura Fisher smiled broadly. Something unexpected. Something human. The day of the challenge arrived. The Great Hall filled with representatives from every council species. Some came out of political interest, others simply to witness what many expected to be a quick and one-sided contest. Betting pools had formed, across the station, with the odds heavily favoring the Vorg champion. Captain Hayes stood with the human delegation on their assigned platform. His face was tight with worry as he watched the center arena being prepared. Any word from Dr. Fisher? Asked Lieutenant Weber, scanning the entrance doors. She said she would meet us here, Hayes replied. She spent the entire night in the ship's lab. A soft tone rang through the hall, signaling the start of the proceedings. Coordinator Illyri glided to the center of the arena. Representatives of the Galactic Council, we gather to witness a formal challenge under Article 17 of the Charter. The Vorg Imperium has challenged Earth's worthiness, as is their right under ancient tradition. From one side of the arena, a large door slid open. Commander Gorth entered to the cheers of the Vorg delegation. He wore minimal armor, leaving his scaled chest exposed to show confidence. At his sides hung 2 short blades, and his claws had been polished to gleaming points. Representing the Vorg Imperium, Commander Gorth, veteran of 17 campaigns, and bearer of the Imperial Claw, announced Illyri. The massive warrior raised his arms, accepting the approval of the crowd. Even species that normally avoided the Vorg seemed impressed by his powerful presence. And representing Earth, Illyri continued, turning to the opposite entrance, Dr. Laura Fisher. The door slid open and Fisher walked calmly into the arena. A wave of murmurs spread through the watching crowd. Unlike Gorth's battle-ready appearance, Fisher wore what looked like a slightly modified version of her standard research uniform. A small pack was strapped to her back, and a belt around her waist held several pouches. She carried no visible weapons. Hayes noticed something else. Fisher wore a small earpiece allowing communication with the delegation platform. Kralthak's voice boomed from the Vorg section. "Is this a joke? Your champion brings no weapons to a combat challenge." Fisher looked up at the Vorg ambassador. "I brought appropriate tools for the task at hand." Coordinator Illyri raised her hands for silence. "The rules have been explained to both champions. Combat continues until one party submits or is rendered unable to continue. No fatal strikes are permitted." She looked between the two contestants. "Do you both understand and agree?" Gorth nodded, his amber eyes fixed on Fisher with predatory focus. "I understand and agree," Fisher said calmly. "Then let the challenge begin." Illyri quickly moved to the edge of the arena as a transparent barrier rose around the combat area. Gorth wasted no time. With surprising speed for his size, he charged directly at Fisher, claws extended. The human audience members gasped as the massive reptilian warrior closed the distance in seconds. But Fisher was no longer where she had been standing. With quick economical movement, she had stepped aside at the last possible moment. Gorth skidded to a stop, turning to face her with a growl. "Running only delays the inevitable," the Vorg said through his translator. "I'm not running," Fisher replied. "I'm observing." This seemed to anger Gorth. He charged again, this time feinting to one side before striking with his opposite claw. Fisher ducked beneath the blow and retreated again, maintaining the distance between them. For several minutes, this pattern continued. Gorth would attack with increasing ferocity, while Fisher would evade by the narrowest margins. She never counterattacked, never engaged directly. Instead, she moved in careful patterns around the arena. In the observation platform, Lieutenant Weber leaned closer to Hayes. "She's making him work in this environment. The station's gravity is set to Earth standard, slightly lighter than the Vorg homeworld. He'll tire faster than he expects." Hayes nodded. "And she's mapping his attack patterns. Look at her eyes. She's studying him." In the arena, Gorth's frustration was growing visible. His attacks became wilder, less controlled. After a particularly vicious lunge that Fisher sidestepped, the Vorg stopped and glared at her. "Face me and fight, human. Is this how your species proves its worth, by running and hiding?" Fisher stopped moving as well, standing just beyond his reach. "No, Commander. This is how we observe, learn, and adapt." She touched a control on her wristband. "And this is how we use our environment." Suddenly, the environmental systems in the arena changed. The temperature dropped rapidly and the humidity level spiked. Cold mist began forming in the air. "What trickery is this?" Gorth demanded, his movements becoming visibly slower as the temperature fell. "Simple biology," Fisher replied. "Vorg are reptilian. Your metabolic rate slows in cold environments. Your scales absorb moisture when humidity rises, making them heavier." She began circling him now, no longer retreating. "I read the station's environmental records. Your quarters are kept 15 degrees warmer than human standard. This temperature is within safe parameters for both our species, but it affects you much more than me." Gorth roared and charged again, but his movements were sluggish. Fisher easily avoided him, then reached into one of her belt pouches and tossed a small sphere that broke open at the Vorg's feet. A thick, sticky substance splashed onto the floor and the warrior's legs. "Synthetic adhesive," Fisher explained, as Gorth struggled to free his feet. "Adapted from the formula your own species uses for ship repairs. I found the technical specifications in the Council's public database." The watching crowd had fallen silent. What had begun as an expected slaughter had turned into something entirely different. A demonstration of preparation and environmental manipulation. Gorth ripped one foot free of the adhesive with a massive effort and swung his arm in a wide arc. This time, his claws caught Fisher's sleeve, tearing the fabric and drawing a thin line of red across her arm. Hayes tensed, ready to call for the match to be stopped, but Fisher remained calm. She retreated again, reached into another pouch, and pulled out a small spray device. "Human blood contains iron," she said conversationally as Gorth struggled toward her. "Your species evolved on a low-iron planet. Your biochemistry treats it as a mild toxin. She sprayed a fine mist toward Gorth's face. The Vorg tried to dodge, but his reactions were too slow. As the particles made contact with his eyes and the membranes of his mouth, he began to cough and shake his head. "That's not enough to harm you," Fisher assured him. "Just enough to irritate your sensory organs. Like how pepper affects human eyes." The massive warrior was now visibly struggling. The cold, the adhesive, and the irritating spray had all taken their toll. His movements were uncoordinated. His breathing labored. Fisher stopped and stood directly before him, just beyond arm's reach. "Commander Gorth, you are a skilled warrior. In a direct physical contest, you would defeat me easily. But humans don't survive by fighting fair. We survive by understanding, by preparation, and by using every advantage we can find." She took a small device from her final pouch. "This contains a concentrated version of the iron compound I just used. If I throw this at your feet, the effects will be much more severe, painful though not permanently damaging. Or you can submit now, and we can end this with mutual respect." Gorth stared at her through reddened eyes. For a long, tense moment, the entire hall held its breath. Then slowly the massive Vorg lowered himself to one knee. "I submit," he said, the words clearly difficult for him. The transparent barrier around the arena lowered. Coordinator Illyri stepped forward, her expression one of astonishment. "The challenge is complete. Earth's champion is victorious." The hall erupted into chaos as delegations reacted with everything from applause to angry shouts. Fisher ignored them all, instead approaching Gorth with a medical kit from her pack. "This will help with the irritation," she said, offering a spray canister. "It neutralizes the iron compound." Gorth studied her with new interest as she treated his eyes. "You never intended to fight me as a warrior?" "No," Fisher agreed, "because I'm not one." The council chamber erupted into chaos after Fisher's victory. The Vorg delegation rose from their seats shouting protests. Ambassador Kralthak's voice boomed above the others. "This was not combat. The human used tricks and technology, Captain." Hayes watched with growing concern as other species joined the debate. Some supported the Vorg's complaints while others defended the outcome. Coordinator Illyri tried to restore order, her slim arms raised for attention. Finally, a deep resonating tone cut through the noise. The chamber fell silent as the Tetrax, Elder, a crystalline being of great age, rose from his seat. "The rules of the challenge were clear," said the Elder, his voice like stones shifting underwater. "All natural abilities and reasonable equipment were permitted. The human used knowledge as her weapon. There is no dishonor in this." Kralthak stepped forward, his scaled face tight with anger. "The challenge was meant to test warrior spirit, not scientific trickery." "Was it?" The Elder's crystalline form caught the light as he turned. "The exact wording of Article 17 is to test the essential character of a species seeking membership." He gestured toward Fisher, who stood calmly in the center of the arena. "The human has shown us precisely that character. They are not warriors by instinct, but problem solvers by nature." The Avaran representatives fluttered their iridescent wings in what Hayes recognized as their sign of agreement. Several other delegations followed suit, making their own gestures of support. Kralthak looked around the chamber, realizing he was losing ground. With a final glare at the human delegation, he turned and stormed from the room, followed by his fellow Vorg. In the arena below, medical personnel had arrived to examine both champions. Fisher waved them away from her minor cut, instead helping them treat Gorth's irritated eyes. The massive warrior sat patiently as she explained the neutralizing compound she had provided. "You prepared all of this in one night?" Gorth asked, studying her with newfound curiosity. "The concepts were already in my head," Fisher replied. "I just needed to adapt existing tools. Humans are good at improvising. You could have used more harmful substances. Why didn't you?" Fisher looked surprised by the question. "The goal wasn't to hurt you. It was to win the challenge with minimal harm to either of us." Gorth made a rumbling sound that his translator didn't convert. "Interesting. Most species would have seized the opportunity to humiliate a Vorg warrior." "Humiliation serves no useful purpose," Fisher said simply. Later, in the human delegation's quarters, The team celebrated their unexpected victory. Lieutenant Weber raised a glass in Fisher's direction. To Dr. Fisher, who defeated a Vorg commander with science. Everyone cheered, except Hayes, who sat slightly apart, his expression troubled. Fisher noticed and moved to sit beside him. "You don't seem happy about our win, Captain." Hayes lowered his voice. "The Vorg aren't known for accepting defeat gracefully. I'm concerned about retaliation." Fisher nodded. "I've been thinking the same thing. Their retreat from the chamber was too quick, too organized. I've ordered additional security measures on the horizon," Hayes said, "but I can't shake the feeling that there's something more going on here." Their conversation was interrupted when the door chime sounded. A station security officer entered, her uniform bearing the neutral gray of the Council's administrative staff. "Captain Hayes, Dr. Fisher, your presence is requested in the Council Chair's private chambers immediately." They exchanged concerned glances before following the officer through the station's corridors. Instead of the main council area, they were led to a smaller, more secluded section of the station. The security officer stopped at an ornate door. "Only the two of you are authorized," she explained, then departed. Inside, they found a circular room with a single round table. Seated around it were Coordinator Illyri, the Tetrax Elder, and to their surprise, a Vorg. Not Kralthak, but another high-ranking official Hayes didn't recognize. "Captain, Doctor, please join us," said Illyri, gesturing to empty seats. "This is Subcommander Verak of Vorg Internal Security." The Vorg nodded stiffly but did not offer the traditional greeting of his species. "What is this about?" Hayes asked as they took their seats. The Tetrax Elder's crystalline form shimmered as he spoke. "Information has come to light that concerns Earth security, as well as the Council's. Subcommander Verak has taken great risk to bring this to our attention." Verak's amber eyes fixed on Fisher. "Your victory today disrupted carefully laid plans. Ambassador Kralthak is not merely a diplomat. He is the leader of a faction within the Vorg Imperium that seeks expansion through conquest rather than cooperation." "They expected us to lose the challenge," Hayes said, understanding dawning. "Yes," Verak confirmed. "A defeat would have removed Earth from Council protection for 50 years. Long enough for the expansionist faction to claim your territory as hunting grounds." Fisher's eyes widened. "They wanted to invade Earth?" "Not immediately," the Vorg explained. "First, they planned to establish bases in your outer solar system, gradually increasing pressure until your governments accepted Vorg protection in exchange for limited autonomy. A standard conquest pattern," Illyri added. "They've used it on non-council worlds before." Hayes leaned forward. "Why are you telling us this, Subcommander? Betraying your own people?" Verak's scales shifted in what might have been discomfort. "The expansionist faction does not speak for all Vorg. Many of us believe in the Council's founding principles, cooperation and mutual defense. War with Earth would benefit no one but Kralthak and his supporters." "There's something else," the Tetrax Elder added. Dr. Fisher's approach to the challenge made a strong impression on many representatives. Several species who have long feared the Vorg saw that even the mightiest warrior can be defeated through intelligence and preparation. "You've unintentionally weakened Kralthak's position," Illyri explained. "But that makes him more dangerous. Desperate leaders take desperate actions." Fisher looked troubled. "What do you expect him to do?" "We believe he will attempt to provoke an incident," Verak said. "Something to justify military action against Earth despite the challenge outcome." "How would he do that?" Hayes asked. The Vorg hesitated. "There are rumors of a planned attack on your ship, the Horizon. It would be disguised to appear as if another species was responsible, creating confusion and preventing a unified council response." Hayes stood immediately. "I need to alert my crew." "We've already increased security around your docking bay," Illyri assured him. "But there's a more permanent solution we'd like to discuss." The Tetrax Elder moved his crystalline hands, creating a holographic display above the table. "The Council has accelerated its deliberations regarding Earth's status. Based on Dr. Fisher's demonstration of human problem-solving abilities, And this new information about the threat you face, we are prepared to offer Earth provisional full membership immediately, rather than observer status. Hayes sat back down, stunned. That's unexpected. Full membership includes mutual defense agreements, Illyria explained. An attack on Earth would legally require a response from all Council species, including loyal Vorg forces. It would make Kralthak's plans impossible. There's something you're not telling us, Fisher said, studying their faces. This is too generous. Varrock made that rumbling sound again, which Hayes now recognized as Vorg laughter. Perceptive. Yes, there is more. The Council has been concerned about the rising power of the expansionist faction for some time. Your victory provides an opportunity to check their influence. You're using us as a political tool, Hayes said, not entirely comfortable with the idea. We're offering a mutually beneficial alliance, the Tetrax Elder corrected. Earth gains protection and access to Council technology. The Council gains a species with unique problem-solving approaches. His crystalline gaze turned to Fisher. Your methods today impressed many of us. Fisher exchanged a look with Hayes. We can't make this decision alone. We need to consult with Earth's governments. Of course, Illyria agreed, but do so quickly. Kralthak is already gathering his supporters. As they left the meeting, Hayes and Fisher walked silently through the station corridors, processing the revelations. Do you think we can trust them? Hayes finally asked. Fisher considered the question carefully. I think their interests align with ours for now. The Tetrax Elder seemed genuine, and Varrock was taking a huge risk by warning us. Hayes nodded. Either way, Earth needs to know what's happening here. He touched the communication device on his wrist. I'll arrange an emergency transmission. Fisher paused, looking out a viewport at the stars. It's strange to think that our entire planet's future might have been decided by something as simple as understanding Vorg biology. That's why you're here, Hayes said with a small smile. To understand the things I never would have thought to ask about. And that, Fisher replied, is humanity's real strength. Not any single skill, but all of us together, each contributing what we know best. As they continued toward the communication center, station personnel of various species watched them pass, some with newfound respect, others with newfound wariness. Word of what had happened in the challenge had spread quickly throughout the station. Earth was no longer just another primitive newcomer to the galactic stage. Thanks to a scientist who didn't claim to be a warrior, it had become something the Council had not seen. 6 months passed since Earth accepted provisional membership in the Galactic Council. The human delegation grew from 12 to 50 as scientists, diplomats, and engineers arrived to study Council technology and establish trade agreements. Earth's governments worked together with unusual harmony, united by the opportunities and challenges of their new galactic status. Dr. Laura Fisher had become an unexpected diplomatic figure. Her victory over Commander Gorth had made her a symbol of human ingenuity. Species that once viewed humans with suspicion now sought her insights on various problems. The Vorg referred to her with a new term that translated roughly as the one who does not claim, a reference to her insistence that she was not a warrior despite her victory. Captain Hayes, promoted to admiral for his role in securing Earth's membership, now commanded a small fleet of Earth vessels docked at the Council station. He and Fisher met regularly to discuss the integration of human technology with more advanced Council systems. The Tetrax have offered to help upgrade our ship's propulsion systems, Hayes said as they walked through the station's botanical garden. It would cut travel time between Earth and the station by 60%. Fisher nodded, pausing to examine an alien plant with slowly pulsing leaves. Good. The faster we can move people and ideas between Earth and the Council, the better. Hayes lowered his voice. Any word on Kralthak and his faction? According to Sub-Commander Varrock, they've lost significant support within the Vorg Imperium. Our alliance with the loyal Vorg forces has proven beneficial for both sides. She smiled slightly. Commander Gorth now leads a cultural exchange program between our species. He seems genuinely interested in understanding human approaches to problem-solving. A Vorg interested in something besides combat? You've made quite an impression. Their conversation was interrupted by an urgent chime from Hayes's communication device. His expression became serious as he listened to the message. Emergency council session in 30 minutes. All species representatives are required to attend. When they arrived at the council chamber, they found it already filled with tense representatives from every member species. The Tetrax elder occupied the central speaking position, his crystalline form darker than usual, a sign of grave concern. Representatives of the Galactic Council, the elder began without preamble, a new threat has emerged beyond our borders. Long-range sensors have detected a fleet of unknown ships approaching council space at high velocity. Holographic displays activated above the chamber, showing grainy images of strange organic-looking vessels. They resembled massive sea creatures more than conventional ships. Initial scans indicate these are the Nexari, a predatory species from the galactic rim. They were encountered briefly 2,000 years ago, but were believed to have gone extinct after a supernova destroyed their home system. The chamber erupted with questions and exclamations of alarm. Hayes leaned toward Fisher. "Have you heard of these Nexari before?" She shook her head. "Nothing in the council records I've studied, but look at those ship designs. They appear to be partially biological." The Tetrax elder raised his hands for silence. The Nexari fleet has already attacked 3 outposts at the edge of council space. All attempts at communication have failed. Their trajectory will bring them to the Averan colony world of Lyrith within 14 days, and to this station within 30. Ambassador Kralthak, who had maintained a low profile since the challenge incident, rose from his seat. Despite his diminished influence, he was still the official Vorg representative. "The answer is clear," he declared. "The Council must deploy its combined military forces immediately. The Vorg Imperium offers to lead the defensive fleet." Many representatives nodded in agreement. The Council's standard response to external threats had always been a show of overwhelming military force. Fisher studied the holographic images of the Nexari ships, her brow furrowed in thought. She leaned over to whisper something to Hayes, who looked surprised but nodded. Fisher then stood and approached the speaking platform. "If I may address the Council," she said. The Tetrax elder gestured for her to continue. "Dr. Fisher, the Council recognizes the representative from Earth." "Thank you, Elder." Fisher turned to face the gathered representatives. "Before we commit to military action, I suggest we need more information about these Nexari. Their ships appear to be biomechanical constructs, which suggests a very different technological approach than what we're familiar with." Kralthak made a dismissive gesture. "What does this matter? They attack without provocation. The appropriate response is clear." "Is it?" Fisher asked. "Look at the attack patterns." She manipulated the holographic display to show the damaged outposts. The Nexari targeted communication arrays and sensor stations, but left life support and residential areas largely intact. If their goal was simply destruction, why show such precision? The chamber grew quiet as representatives considered this observation. "What are you suggesting, Dr. Fisher?" asked Coordinator O'Leary. "I'm suggesting that what looks like aggression might actually be something else. The Nexari ships are organic or partially organic. What if their communication methods are also biological rather than technological? They might be trying to communicate, not realizing that destroying our standard equipment prevents, rather than enables contact." Commander Gorth, now part of the Vorg delegation, stepped forward. "An interesting theory, but how would you test it?" Fisher turned back to the display. "The Council has vast biological research capabilities. Instead of sending warships, let's send a research vessel equipped with multiple communication technologies, including biological interfaces. Let's try to understand before we fight." Kralthak scoffed. "Typical human hesitation. While you study, the Nexari will destroy more outposts and potentially this station itself." "We're not suggesting no defense," Hayes interjected, joining Fisher at the platform. "The research mission should have military escort. But Dr. Fisher is right. We need to understand what we're facing." The council chamber filled with debate. Some species supported the traditional military response, while others were intrigued by Fisher's approach. Finally, the Tetrax elder called for a formal vote. To Fisher's surprise, a majority sided with Earth's proposal. Even more surprising was that Commander Gorth voted against his own ambassador, supporting the research mission. "The Council has decided," announced the Elder. "We will prepare a research vessel with military escort to attempt communication with the Nexari. Dr. Fisher, given your insight into this situation, would you lead this mission?" Fisher looked momentarily stunned. "I'm a researcher, not a diplomat, or military leader." "You are the one who saw what others missed," Illyri said, "just as you did during the challenge." After a moment's hesitation, Fisher nodded. "I'll go, but I'll need a team with diverse expertise. And Commander Gorth, if he's willing." The massive Vorg inclined his head. "I would be honored to join this mission." 3 weeks later, Fisher stood on the bridge of the research vessel, Dialogue, watching as they approached the edge of the Nexari fleet. Behind them, a defensive formation of council ships maintained a respectful distance. Commander Gorth stood beside her, his usual armor replaced by a scientist's utility garment that had been specially modified for his massive frame. "Are you nervous?" he asked. Fisher checked the final calibrations on the biological communication array they had developed. "Of course. But I believe understanding is always better than fear." "That," said Gorth with unexpected warmth, "is why I voted to support this mission. You humans have taught me there can be strength in approaches beyond the warrior's path." As the first tentative signals were sent toward the alien fleet, Fisher thought about how far they had come. 6 months ago, she had stood alone against a Vorg warrior, armed only with knowledge and preparation. Now she stood with that same warrior as an ally, facing an unknown species with the same tools, observation, understanding, and the willingness to try something new. "Whatever happens," she said quietly, "this is humanity's real gift to the Council. Not technology or resources, but a different way of seeing problems." The communication array activated, sending complex biological signals into space. For several tense minutes there was no response. Then, slowly, the lead Nexari ship changed course, not toward them aggressively, but adjusting its position to better receive the signals. "They're responding," Fisher said, a smile spreading across her face. "They're trying to talk to us." Beside her, Gorth made the rumbling sound she now knew was Vorg laughter. "It doesn't claim to be a warrior," he said, "yet it succeeds where warriors would fail." "That," Fisher replied, "is humanity in a nutshell."